Guys, do you know how old this water is? Last week? All right. It's all right. Older? Should have done that last time. I had 2 nights ago. All right, G-Sign, don't let me leave without showing you how to change the water filter. All right. Are the members on the Zoom call? Okay, I think we can start because it's a couple minutes past 11. So, welcome everyone to our Sunday service. We always have one summer Sunday service with a bit fewer people. So I was hoping that would be last weekend with the bank holiday, but sometimes we have a couple. So let's get started. I know a lot of people can join by Zoom, so that helps keep us connected anyway through the internet. So G-Sun, can you start us off with our first song? The glory to the life of God above. Now the Lord is in His greatness, does the universe with tender love. Every sick and soul's awakened, every calling them to be free. How shall I attend Him who is calling to the one who came to save me, holding tenderly in His embrace. I rejoice to feel the comfort of the love He has for me. What a blessing! What a blessing of glory. Okay, so I would like to invite up our brother Jisung to offer the opening prayer. So Jisung.
Please join me in prayer. Heavenly parents and true parents, thank you very much for having us today. We would like to enjoy this time with you as we begin the week, and also enjoy this time with each other as you're in our midst. And we pray that through this service today, we'll be able to receive a lot of good points to think about. I can give us the right motivation and the right sort of charge to go through the week spiritually as well. So please be with us, and we'll offer everything to you in all of our names. In the name of Jesus and Heidi, Central West Couple.
Okay, thank you, Jisung. So we'll have one more song and then we'll start the service.
Let's really prepare our hearts and our minds for the sermon today. The Lord into his garden comes, the spices yield a rich perfume. The lilies grow and thrive, the lilies grow and thrive. Refreshing showers of grace divine from the Father flows to every vine, and make the dead revive, and make the dead revive. Oh, that this dry and barren ground in springs of water may abound. A fruitful soil become, a fruitful soil become. The desert blossoms as the rose, when the Savior conquers all his foes, and makes his people one, and makes his people one. Come, brethren, you that love the Lord, and taste the sweetness of his word. In Father's ways go on, in Father's ways go on. Our troubles and our trials here will only make us richer there. When we arrive at home, when we arrive at home.
I think we need to give a big thank you to the LA Family Church for their service to the small communities around the world that can use their kind of professional production to kind of help inspire our own services. So I'll jump into the service. I didn't prepare readings, but I think there's a lot people can read afterwards about the topic I want to cover today. I did want to start actually with a real kind of genuine sense of gratitude. And I really wanted to thank and express my appreciation to members that come to the service, right? And that includes on Zoom, especially because today it's actually a lower attendance than usual, which again happens every year around this time. But it's very easy to underestimate like the value of everyone who's coming here. They're coming here. We don't always all have the exact same understanding, but we do have a shared and common understanding. And I think that shared and common understanding is really, really important. And I think it's more important oftentimes than we realize. And it means a lot to me more than I can often express, right? Because I think God needs people, right? And we all come here because we believe something about God's will and God's providence and a way of approaching our own lives of faith and the restoration of the world that's unique and different and special. And I think each of us, the more of us we have, the faster we can accomplish that goal. But the ones we do have are the ones that it's what we have to work with, right? And we really need to make the most of it and really appreciate each other and understand, understand each other and what is that really shared understanding that we have. So yeah, ultimately, God needs as many people as possible. And there's this quote in the Bible that's always very encouraging, and it's very obvious why it's in the Bible, right? Where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I will be there, right? Because it really gives hope to movements that are starting or that are small or that are trying to make a change, but they're in such a minority compared to the dominant culture of the rest of the world. And it very much moves into kind of what I want to talk about today, because a couple of weeks ago we had kind of the DP workshop that was organized. And again, I'm very grateful for Brendan and Valeria for organizing that, because I actually haven't given a DP lecture in a while, especially when you kind of count COVID and the things that have come up. Probably been about 5 or 6 years. I'm almost ashamed to say, right? Because it was really a rejuvenating experience to be able to kind of just give a DP lecture, even though it's something I've done many times, even though I'm giving it to second gen that have some understanding of the divine principle. It really genuinely felt spiritually good, right? It really is kind of an experience where you're able to kind of teach the word and feel the value of what I genuinely believe in, right? And being able to share that. And before I came, when Brendan first asked me to kind of give lectures, I had said to him, and I really felt this very strongly, I really want to give Moses's course, right? Because Moses's course is the most boring lecture. No one likes to give it. Very few people like to hear it, right? But I just feel it's really important. And I didn't just want to do the usual DP lectures. I really wanted to give something that I felt would be a little different, right? But as it turned out, the schedule I was running a bit late. I kind of went over. And so I had like 10 minutes left at the end, and I had to go. So I gave a 10-minute Moses's lecture, right? It was just really fast, and I just kind of really condensed it to kind of the simplest points. But again, I was really happy with it. I actually was really I really felt good about it, because it really even got me thinking about that lecture and the importance of it, and really what God was trying to do with Moses and the Jewish people, right, at that time. And I think so that kind of turned into the start of this kind of Sunday service, because I'm really thinking Moses was kind of the first time God was trying to get a lot of people at once to come to him, right? It was really up until Moses, he was just really working on the Cain-Abel restoration process. He was just trying to find one person. He was looking for one person that could follow him and have faith in him. And then he was trying to train that one person to win over one other person, right? It was just, it was the foundation of faith. Show me that you are really a man of faith, that you will listen to me. And then it was, okay, show me that you have the heart that can win over people, right? And the foundation of substance. So with Moses, though, it was trying to do that across 2 million people. It was really a nation of people, all with different views and different backgrounds and different challenges. And, they had really been, if you think about it, the slave class in Egypt. So they were uneducated, they had a lot of trauma, they had gone through many incredibly difficult experiences. So, God was trying to figure out, I think, how do I restore 2 million people at a time? Can I do it? Right. He's like, all right, well, we'll make this as simple as possible. Right. You just have to, I'm going to have one person who's kind of in a leadership role. He's going to defend you in a very kind of public way. He's going to put his life on the line. And then all you have to do is kind of follow him and accept him as your leader, right? Well, that didn't really work. Okay, let's wait 40 years. Let's try again, right? And it's just like, all right, this time we'll make it more obvious. We'll have miracles. We'll have obvious miracles. We'll punish the Pharaoh and all the Egyptians, right? This will be really clear that I'm working, right? And okay, all right, good. That worked. We get out there. As soon as we get out there, as soon as we open up the ocean and cross, then people start whining again, right? It's like, okay, I'm going to send Moses up for 40 days. They can just behave themselves for 40 days. That'll convince me, right? Can't last 40 days without Moses, right? They just kind of revert back to pagan worship and, their old cultural habits, right? So, God was really he was trying to figure out in a way, how do you get 2 million people to work together? And took a long time, right? Even after Moses, it was about another, at least according to the Bible, 1,600 years before they could kind of all figure it out and he could kind of send Jesus. And it was always like, let me just set up one symbolic condition so that everyone can follow, right? Let's build a tabernacle. Let's have the Ark of the Covenant. As long as people believe in one thing, then I can keep working, right? And you could just see how slow a process it was, how kind of step by step it was to kind of change the culture of a group of people, to kind of bring them up spiritually, to come closer to God. It was a long process, right? And even when Jesus came, it was again, the same formula. Okay, all right, well, let me just get 12 people to believe in this man and follow him. Can I do it with 12 people? And the answer was also no, right? And then, of course, you have then the restart of the providence, right? And so all of history is kind of, in a way, Moses's course, right? And I think one of those common elements that we all believe in that keeps us coming back together, coming back to the principle, is the vision that there can and will be an ideal world, right? That's possible. And I think that possibility is kind of really why the principle explains history is going in a direction, right? That history isn't random, that Moses's course isn't just some random biblical story about slaves kind of coming into freedom, but that it has a goal and a focus, right? And that there's a formula in play. And in the story of Moses, if you read it in the Bible and you understand the principal argument about a 40-day condition, there are so many 40-day conditions in the story of Moses. It's very, very clear that God is working with the formula. It's very clear that there's a plan and a direction. And so the story of Moses, the story of Jesus, and then obviously, True Father is following the same model, is to kind of figure out how to bring people from here to here, right? Closer to this ideal world that we believe in, right? A world without human suffering, without, abuse, without trauma. But you can see that True Father, it's almost like God is kind of learning through history, right? And so True Father's method was much more kind of back to the original one-on-one, right? The direct kind of Cain and Abel standard, right? So when Father's running away from North Korea and has to come into South Korea, he's traveling with 2 people and one really dedicated disciple. And when he's in the refugee camp in Busan, it's him and Wonpil Kim writing the principle and witnessing to people. And then people kind of coming to the church one at a time, right? There was that Korean missionary who just kept having visions that there was a teacher on the hill. The Messiah was teaching on a hill in Busan. And so she went and she's like, I can't believe this. I don't even want to go. It's a mud hut, right? Why would I go in there? Why is the Messiah in a mud hut, right? It was just one at a time. And then if you hear the stories of our parents, the first gen who joined, it was always very much, they were invited by one person and you had this kind of spiritual parent model. But it wasn't really a spiritual parent. It was like a spiritual single parent, right? It was one person that would, sometimes it was a sibling, sometimes it was a friend, sometimes it was just a random person on the street. In my dad's case, he was living out in a hippie hut in the middle of someone's, land, right? And his spiritual mother would just come from the church center and visit him. And even if he wasn't there, she'd leave him a gift, right? And so it's very much this kind of much more one-on-one process, and the church really grew and exploded that way. So it's God's formula, like what Moses's course is really trying to show is, how do you change a whole nation, right? And it's very difficult, is what it shows, right? And you try to set up these kind of national level conditions, and father also obviously follows this formula, mother follows this formula. You have a 7-year course, and then you have another 7-year course, right? You have to keep establishing conditions till something works. But really, it's at the end of the day, there's the national level and then there's the individual level, right? And where we can influence is on an individual level. So what's not written in the Bible is Moses obviously was leading the Jewish people. And what's written a little bit is at that time, he was trying to build a structure to manage a nation, right? So you had the tribal structure, you had 12 tribal leaders, and they would work with Moses, right? And then each of those tribal leaders obviously then would have to have some system under them, right? And so that people could connect to Moses through that kind of structure, right? Then through Moses, they could kind of connect to God. And that was kind of the whole system that God was trying to put into place. Like, how do you have so many people connect to his representative? So I think that's, it's a quite a big challenge. And we see that in, our own lives of faith. We're individuals, right? All we can do and all we can affect is kind of our own families and the people around us. And, every day it's kind of like, you're just trying to keep some life of faith. You're trying to take care of your family. You're trying to cover the bills, right? And that becomes the day-to-day. But, mission really requires, the movement of the Providence forward requires more than that. I think that's kind of the ultimate, kind of the point I'd like to make today, is that there needs to be some, in order for the Providence to move forward, we also all have to be moving forward, right? And the way to move forward is there has to be a path to God, right? There has to be a process to God, and that process is only through other people, right? I think something that's very different about the principle is you have this kind of very generic belief about spirituality, like, oh, we all can connect to God directly, like God is in each of us, and if we meditate or if we pray or if we do all these things, and we'll feel God and we'll understand God more deeply. And I believe that. I don't think that's not true, but I think it's only partially true, right? Because I think what the principle is outlining very clearly is actually there is that individual path, but it has to still connect to the Messiah, right? And it's something Christians understand very clearly, because Jesus said it super clearly, right? I am the way, the truth, and the light. No one gets to heaven but through me, right? And that's also absolutely true, right? It's that the Messiah position is the path to God, right? We can kind of walk that path in different ways, but ultimately it has to come to the central point, right? And so then each person then is trying to build that path to God, not just for themselves. And I think this is the crucial point, but for other people. Other people can only get to God. If everyone can only get to God through the Messiah, and we have to get to God through the Messiah, then other people also have to get to God through the Messiah. And that doesn't happen automatically. That's the effort that's required. That's the outreach and the kind of mission work that is kind of asked of all of us, right? And so that's very much then the individual Cain and Abel dynamic, right? It's each relationship we have, each person we meet, each friend we make, each family member we have. In any moment, two people are interacting with each other and have a relationship. One is slightly closer to God than the other, right? And that the path to get closer to God is through that person. And, you actually rarely know who that is. You always think you're the one that's right. You always think you're the one that's slightly closer to God, right? Than the person you might be talking to or arguing with or struggling, right? But Father gave a really good quote about Cain and Abel relationships once, where he said, the Cain and Abel dynamic is always shifted. So in any moment, you can be in a Cain or Abel position, even with the same person, even within the same conversation, right? So, and this is something I don't know how many of you met Jerry Tamayo when she was here, but she was my dorm mother in Korea and she was visiting. It's one thing she said that always stuck with me, because she talked a lot about Cain and Abel relationships. And she said, if you don't know whether you're Cain and Abel, or if it's too hard to think about it, just assume you're Cain, right? And even if you're Abel, that will be the right heart and attitude to have. It's the heart of serving and trying to find God in the other person and understanding God in the other person, right? It's the standard of Jacob and Esau, right? Jacob was humbling himself before Esau and serving Esau. And that's how he was victorious. That's how he won, right? So the Cain and Abel dynamic is kind of the individual level of that restoration, and it kind of extrapolates up to like a Moses level, national level, right? And that kind of brings me to what I think, the main point I want to try to make it today is I really believe the providence moves forward at kind of two speeds, right? And the one speed is incredibly slow and steady, right? And that's the daily practice. The daily practice of having a life of faith, coming to church on Sundays, being involved in the community, taking care of your family, like all that is kind of the slow and steady pace that is required for our personal growth and our spiritual growth. But the providence also has a second speed, which is all at once, right? Everything in a short period of time, right? And I think that this difference is also can explain a lot of the differences between the first and second gen way of thinking as well. Because when the first gen joined the church, it was a kind of all at once period of the providence, right? And I'll use America as an example, but in America, like 71, 72, 73, 74, the vast majority of the members joined in that time period. And in that time period, there was massive persecution. People were getting kidnapped and kidnapped and forced to deconvert. And Father was having massive rallies with 50 to 100,000 people. And, I very much remember my father's sharing his experiences about Washington Monument rally, Yankee Stadium rally, and just like every day it was like a battle, and every day things were happening, right? And that's kind of very different than the second gen experience, where you kind of grow up in a family environment and you're waking up early to do hundoke sometimes, and the holy days, and you go to church, and then you go to workshops in the summer. And so it's a much different pace. And I think it's important to kind of differentiate those things, because I think the slow and steady is in many ways, absolutely necessary, but in some ways it's kind of easier, right? It becomes a habit and you do it and you kind of keep doing it. But I think remembering that the providence can shift in a moment is really an act of faith. And it's kind of much harder to believe in and understand. And when I was on STF, it was actually my biggest struggle, because the way I thought of fundraising was, I need to make X amount every half an hour, right? It's like, all right, my goal is, 150 euros, and I'll be out here for 10 hours, so I need to make 15 euros an hour, right? It was very hard for me to believe that I could go through the whole day and make 50 euros. In the last 5 minutes, I could make 100. Or I could make nothing the whole day. In the last 5 minutes, I could make 150, right? That happened with the more spiritual people, right? And that's what I was really trying to understand and struggle myself, because it takes an act of faith to always believe that you can have the 150 the last 10 minutes, right? And I really feel that's a good analogy for the providence, right? And I see that again, I see that as a major difference between kind of the first and second gen faith. I think the first gen always have this faith that tomorrow 1 million people can join the church, right? They actually genuinely believe that. And even though a lot of them have become a little bit cynical or have lost that faith, because when they joined the church, they believed the whole world could be restored within a year, right? It was that kind of faith, that faith in like the tipping point and the speed by which the world can change and improve. So my point though is, for that tipping point to happen, for that shift to happen, it really takes that act of faith. And it also means we have to go beyond the slow and steady style of a life of faith. And I think that's where outreach becomes so important, because outreach is the hard part of faith. The witnessing and the tribal messiahship element of our faith is the part that requires faith. It's not something that really works kind of on the every half an hour, every hour I'll make 15 euros kind of thinking. It really requires spiritual energy and spiritual support. And it really takes faith in that spirit world and that spiritual energy and that spiritual support. So to me, I really see, also the parallels from Moses' time, trying to set up a structure, set up a tabernacle, set up kind of tribal leaders and kind of trying to give people a way to come to God, even if Moses, gets angry and hits a rock twice, as the principle describes. And I see Mother doing the same thing. We built the temple in Korea and then the Chuncheon, but also having, the Chunwon, and also having the Chuncheon kind of localized into every church center, right? Is trying to give that ability for every single community to kind of take on that position of messiahship, right? And I really don't want to ever have to be in Moses's position, right? It's a terrible, difficult position to be in, to try to manage 2 million people and half of them hate you. And, there was a couple revolts in that time in the Bible as well, right? So it's, the responsibility is incredibly big, and it feels like nothing happens. And I think that's really, though, why it's so important to do. Like, the only way the providence moves forward is if we take the goal seriously, that we really want to establish an ideal world, and that we're doing something outside of taking care of our own family, outside of just, having our own life of faith. We need to open a path for other people to get there. In order for there to be a tipping point, in order for there to be a shift, it's just not enough to only focus on our own circumstances, our own community, right? The importance of outreach, the importance of tribal messiahship is sometimes hard for us to have faith in, or hard for us to grasp. But I really feel it's the only way that shift ever happens, and that that kind of explosion of activity can happen, right? Anything can set it off. And I want to give an example, because I don't know how many of you have heard, but Netflix has made a new TV series. It's a 6-part kind of docu-series about cults and about cult leaders. And we're one of them on that docu-series. There's only 6 episodes, and 1 episode is completely dedicated to our church. And of course, it's going to be in a very, very negative level, right? But in one way, that might be a catalyst to start, that brings people to us, right? So are we ready for, have we been prepared? Are we ready for when the shift comes? Or are we caught off guard, right? Because it reminds me of a story that when the first negative article came out in the US, they brought it to Father, and it was awful. And the members were like so upset by it, right? Because it was so unfair. Like negative articles are so unfair. They're so like twisted in terms of like, the people, we know we have a genuine heart. We know we're really trying. We believe what we believe and we want to help people, and that's our motivation. And then to read that we're just, manipulating people and tricking people, it hurts on a very personal level. So the members were really upset by this article, and they brought it to Father. And Father was so happy, right? He was like, finally, this is what I was waiting for, right? Because he kind of knew, I'm sure he knew that this was the catalyst for the growth of the movement, right? It was like, it got to a point where this was the only way the church was going to grow. It needed to go through this kind of adversity. Sorry, I got the word wrong. Getting old. So, and sometimes you can see it in the periphery. You can see kind of the clouds forming, right? So this Netflix thing is kind of on in my mind. And then the other thing is the kind of, I mentioned it in the email I sent out, Mandy's letter, about the sex ed curriculum in school and how they're going to actually put that as part of the leaving cert, right? So it's not just a matter of like, you have to learn it in school, but you're going to have to learn it and pass it to go to university, right? And so like, that's kind of another kind of cultural shift, kind of something that can have a massive impact and potentially create a big backlash. And like in certain communities in England, for example, the Muslim community is coming together and protesting this kind of thing, right? So what I'm saying is we kind of need to be ready. We need to be ready for the providence to kind of leap forward, because otherwise it just moves too slowly and it fizzles out, right? And I always remember, like, I'm always a bit nervous because my dad used to say, Father could call us to create any moment and we'll have to drop everything and go, right? And it's always been in the back of my mind. It's always been like a core element of my life of faith. Like, am I ready to answer the call of God if it just comes? Like if I'm sitting here in this service and it looks like I'm having a stroke or something, but I have a spiritual experience and God says, yeah, it's time, go live in, go find the poorest town in Ireland with the worst weather and live there the rest of your life, right? And just witness to the local priests and stuff, right? Can I do that? And I want my answer to be yes, but I don't know if it would be, right? And so there's a part of me that's always trying to prepare myself for that. But it's kind of also, it's not just a nervousness, but I really try to make it a kind of, it's good to almost be excited by it, almost waiting for it, expecting, right? Because it's actually what we want, right? We want to answer the call of God. We want to move the providence, right? And it's scary, and there's things about it that we're not, there's like practical elements that get in the way, like where will the kids go to school, right? What about their friends, money, job, all that stuff, right? But at the end of the day, like, I think what we really want, if we're honest, and what we really care about is we want the world to get better, right? And that takes a certain something that we have to be ready to shift and change for, right? So I didn't share the title of my service till the end, but the title of my service was The Call of God. And I wanted to end really with the question on, are you ready for the call of God? And are you preparing for it? And I think that's a crucial question in our life of faith. How ready are we for God to shift things, or for the world to shift? And are we ready to respond to it, right? Because it's what the world needs anyway, right? We want the world to get better. We want to be part of these shifts. And in a way, we really want to help push those shifts to happen, right? So it's happened before. Like, we have a lot of examples of it. Even in our own church, the church has really taken leaps and bounds many times, right? You know, and there's very clear moments we can reference. I think it's important we remember them and have faith in them when things slow down, right? Because it could be tomorrow. I don't know when the Netflix documentary comes out, but it could be the Netflix documentary comes out and we start getting 50 people a day coming to the center asking about the church, right? And are we ready for that? Are we ready to change and move God's problems forward? So that's kind of what has been on my mind, especially kind of over the past 2 weeks since I gave the kind of Moses course lecture. I was really thinking about Moses a lot. I feel really sorry for Moses because in the end, he couldn't even go to Canaan. And I don't like giving homework at Sunday service, but since I didn't have a reading, I really think people should read in the Bible that verse when God is begging Moses to go into the land of Canaan. And Moses is begging God, I mean. And Moses argues with God a lot. It's one of the things that's really interesting about Moses' relationship with God. But he's begging God to go in the land of Canaan. And eventually God's like, please stop asking me. I just can't say yes. And it's painful for me, right? And it's just kind of, it's a heartbreaking moment in the Bible, but I really like to think that God took really good care of Moses in the spirit world because of it, right? Like, it's just really, Moses's life was a very difficult life, and a really it's something I feel everyone should study and really try to understand and connect with on a personal level, because Moses was really a man of God, right? Despite a couple relatively small mistakes, in the grand scheme of things that he made. So again, I think it's very good to read those parts of the Bible, and I really encourage everyone to take some time and read at least parts of Moses's life, especially that part at the end, when he's kind of, him and God are having this discussion about Canaan. And again, to close the service, I'll just ask the question again, are we ready? Are we ready to answer the call of God? Are we ready for when the providence shifts and accelerates? And are we preparing for it, right? Because I think that's a really, really crucial part of our life. So on that note, again, thank you everyone for listening and for your attention. And I will end with a prayer. So please join me in prayer. Sarai Manashin Hanal Gumunim. Our beloved and precious Heavenly Parents, as always, it's such a privilege to be able to come here together as an Irish community, as well as with guests who are visiting, to come into this church center, to come into the Changshim one, and to really offer up our hearts and our thoughts to you and our time together. We know we're very blessed to be alive at the time of true parents, to have been kind of taught the principle and to have a deeper understanding of your heart, your will, your providence. And we know really that True Mother will only be with us for a relatively small number of years more. And then the responsibility will really rest on each of our shoulders individually to move the providence forward, to be examples of our true parents' life, to be examples of the principle, and to really be able to take on the mantle of tribal messiahship, the responsibility that entails, the investment in the heart that requires. And we also know and recognize that each of us have a lot of things that block us and stop us from growing, our own history, our own fallen natures, our own struggles. So I pray each of us can find the strength to grow, to face our own demons and our own shortcomings, and to really become truly the best versions of ourselves, the highest ideals that we can achieve, always as children to those in the parent position, as brothers and sisters to each other, to our partners in this life, husbands and wives, and to those who look up to us and depend on us, our children, and all those who we can take care of with a parental heart. So we're truly grateful for the love that we've received from you and from those around us, and pray we can always move forward with a heart of gratitude and determination. And I report these points on behalf of all our brothers and sisters here in Ireland, and in my name, the name of young Il and Vicky Lowe, the Central family. Aju. Aju. Okay, so we'll close with a final song. Thank you, Brendan. I mean, Daniel. The Lord has called and I will go. Where He leads me, I will follow. The same is sorrow as in joy. With my heart I follow my Lord. For none on earth can turn me back. Not even death can stop me. For none on earth can turn me back. Not even death can stop me. To barren valleys, God belongs. I would take the living message to storms, foul and wretched streets. I will bear the word with love. I bind my heart, my life to yours, that it may be and not fade. I bind my heart, my life to yours, that it may be and not fade. To you belongs our former pain, all glory, power, and honor. The world turns and I do not fear. I will gladly bear the cross. Without esteem, without renown, I only wish to follow. Without esteem, without renown, I only wish to follow. So, thank you, Ji-sun, for choosing that song. It kind of was very relevant to the service. The first line being, "The Lord has called and I will go," which was kind of the title of my service. So, I have a spiritual connection there. All right, so we have a couple of announcements. I was going to do a membership meeting today, but I feel like we're a bit sparse on attendance, so maybe we'll try to push it to next week. And I do have lunch downstairs, the usual. And again, I bought way too much lunch, so people feel free